Hello, and welcome to the second episode of the Jam Gamecast. My name's Matt, I'm your host, and here with me is my co host and brother, Jim.
Hey everyone, how's it going out there?
Alright, so now on tonight's podcast, we have a few topics we want to talk about. First, we're going to start off with some underrated games, followed by overrated games. After that, we're going to talk about some disappointing endings, basically games where we thought the ending was disappointing. After that, we're going to follow up with a little discussion about physical gaming versus digital gaming, or rather, uh, physical games versus digital downloaded games. And then we're going to talk about, of course, our usual topics: what you're currently playing, what's on your radar, and recent pickups. So, Jim, it's been a couple weeks, so I'm sure we have a lot to talk about. So, let's dive right into it. Underrated games. Are there any games that you enjoyed or that you like that you might possibly consider to be an underrated game?
Um, I wouldn't say that, I consider any games that I played and really liked to have been like underrated. I guess that's just going off of really the attention that it gets from, I guess the wider world as it were. I would say that, I don't really pay attention to that type of thing. Like, oh, I really like that game. Why aren't people talking about it? I don't really take notice to that type of thing because all that matters to me is, if I enjoyed playing the game and if I got fulfillment out of it, which is, kind of the opposite for, when of what I feel when we get into the overrated topic.
Okay. Well, I, unlike you, have a whole slew of games that I want to talk about that I consider to be underrated games. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off here. The first underrated game I want to talk about is Super Mario RPG on the Super Nintendo. Now, some people might think like, "Oh well, hey, wait a minute, Super Mario RPG that's a good game," or they might even say that that's a great game. Part of the reason why I kind of feel like it's an underrated game is I think you have to consider the timing of it and the time period that it came out or the generation that it came out with. Um, on the Super Nintendo, there's usually a couple RPGs that automatically spring to people's minds. Like when people say, "What's the greatest RPGs on the Super Nintendo?" Automatically people are gonna say, "Oh well, that's simple. Chrono Trigger and Earthbound. They're great RPGs." Some people would probably even list them on the greatest RPG list or the best RPG list over any console or just of all time or in general. So I feel like sometimes Super Mario RPG gets forgotten about because of the generation that it came out on. It came out on the Super Nintendo with those other heavy hitters, and I think people, if they're gonna discuss, great RPGs on the Super Nintendo, they're gonna forget about Super Mario RPG, and I feel like often they do forget about it. So that's why I kind of want to point out that I feel like that's an underrated game because people I think often overlook it because of the other games that came out on that system, or rather the other RPG games that came out on that system.
Okay. So I mean, and I know, in other conversations we've had before, you kind of said that, Final Fantasy wasn't really a present in the United States and North America. Around that time, there were some people that were able to get them, through because it came out on the Famicom. But, you know, I guess from my perception, I would have always thought like RPGs, like anything that the Final Fantasy came out on, that probably would have, overtaken anything. So it surprised me that, you said that, you would say like Chrono Trigger and Earthbound being, the better games. But I guess if they weren't, didn't really have a presence in North America, I guess that's really the answer for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Final Fantasy had a presence in the U.S. or the Western market at that time. The Nintendo Entertainment System had the original Final Fantasy. However, Final Fantasy 2 and 3, or rather the actual Final Fantasy 2 and 3, were never released in the US. They were only ever released in Japan on the Famicom. Uh, and then eventually the US did get a Final Fantasy 2 and 3. However, they were actually Final Fantasy 4 and Final Fantasy 6. So I mean, there was a presence of Final Fantasy. Now, people will also include Final Fantasy 6, and I guess also some people will include Final Fantasy 4 on the best RPG lists on the Super Nintendo, which I guess just contributes more to my point that I feel like Super Mario RPG is forgotten a lot when discussing RPGs on the Super Nintendo.
Hmm. Okay. Now, do you think that the Super Mario RPG, or like that the maybe not the game, it's like that game itself, or just the concept, would do well on the recently released Nintendo Switch?
Well, you mean you're saying if they were to re-release it?
Yeah, or kind of like a remastery or something like that.
Well, I mean it's tough. I mean, I don't think I ever discussed that type of topic on the podcast, but I'm actually not a big fan of remastered editions. To me, a game is what it is, and to me, a game I consider a game for the time period it was released in, and like to me, if you're gonna say, oh, you know a remastered version of Super Mario RPG, to me I'm like, well, that no, that's a Super Nintendo game and that's what it is. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, I really want them to remaster it, because I don't want them to remaster it. I want them to make a sequel to Super Mario RPG. I mean, you know, if you're not going to consider, I mean, they did kind of continue on with Mario RPGs. You have the Mario and Luigi series on, spanning from the Game Boy Advance to, current 3DS. And then there's the Paper Mario series as well. But there's never been a direct sequel to Super Mario RPG. I rather them make that than do a remastered edition for the Nintendo Switch. I'm not a big fan of remastered editions. To me, a game is released on the platform or console that it's released on, and if I want to play it, I'll play it on that. You know.
Hmm. That's interesting because I guess I would come from the opposite school from you. But I mean, if that could actually be a whole topic on itself. But I know we're focusing right now on you know underrated games, so we can maybe table that remastery editions and come back to that sometime.
Yeah, might be a good topic for another podcast. We'll have to put that aside and maybe possibly pick that up on another podcast. Um, all right, so I'll just move on to the next underrated game that I have here on my list. I want to talk about Fable 2. Now, people might say that all the Fable games are good. Some people might argue that Fable 3 is not good. I haven't played Fable 3 yet, so I can't really comment on that. But I think that Fable 2 is often underrated because people will just automatically say, like, oh, the Fable series, yeah, Fable 1 is great. But to me, I feel like Fable 2 improved on what they had with Fable 1 and improved everything that might be wrong with Fable 1. If you want to say things are wrong with it, that might not be the best, terminology. But I feel like Fable 2 just built on what they had in Fable 1 and created a great game. Um, so yeah, I feel like Fable 2 is often forgot about because if people are gonna, bring up the Fable series, they'll automatically just their mind jumps to Fable 1 and or the original Fable, and that's all they'll talk about, and Fable 2 gets overlooked.
Yeah, I guess that surprises me because I also played the first two Fable games, and I felt that Fable 2 was the better of the two, being on the more advanced system. And not to say that you know Fable, like the first Fable game, sucked. That was also a very great game. But I mean, again, I guess that just goes into my lack of attention to what the masses or what people really talk about. I just think a good game is a good game no matter what.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, it's not to say that Fable 1 is a bad game. Fable 1's a great game. Um, but I think in terms of this topic, I feel like because Fable 1's such a good game, people just automatically overlook Fable 2. And Fable 2 is also a really great game. And like we've both said, we both enjoy Fable 2 more than the original Fable. So I think that just builds on our argument that Fable 2 is an underrated game, since people usually will just kind of talk about Fable 1 as opposed to Fable 2. Alright, so the next game I want to talk about, it's a PS1 game, and I feel like this kind of also suffers from the generation that it came out with, and the other games that were available at that time. So this game is a game called Legend of Legaia, and it's a PlayStation 1 RPG that is really just a great little game. I feel like not a lot of people might know about this game or might have missed it, because I mean, obviously, for that time period, you're competing with Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8, Final Fantasy 9, all on the original PlayStation. I mean, SquareSoft, how can you, or Square Enix now, how can you compete with that big company, and Legend of Legaia is just, this small little game, but it's an amazing RPG. The battle system is quite unique, and really, I don't think I've seen anything really since then. It almost kind of, when you go into a battle, it's almost as if it's like almost not necessarily a fighter, but it has those mechanics. Like for example, you'll choose what fighting moves that you want to do. For example, you'll say, okay, I'll start out with a punch to the head, and then I'll kick them in the chest, and then follow that up with like another punch to the face, or a kick to the face, and then a punch to the gut, and then a sweep of the legs, or something like that. And really, it's just a really unique battle system that I can't think of another game that has one like that. Now, there was a sequel to Legend of Legaia 2, that came out on the PS2. However, I have never played that game.
That sounds like interesting. Was that like a like more turn based? I guess because you could select attacks.
Yeah, it was turn based. Basically, I think, I don't know if about when you get deeper into the game, but when you first start the game, you basically have like three moves that you can do. Like I said, like a punch. You could just punch three punches to the head, three punches to the gut, or three kicks to the head, or three kicks to the stomach, something like that. Any sort of combination that you want, but you basically get three moves to do, and then once you did your moves, then the computer or the AI in the game does their move, and then you do your move, and so forth. So yeah, it's a turn based game, but it's just an interesting mechanic that you get to choose punch kick punch or punch punch kick. So it's a really interesting system, and I mean not just only I mean regardless of the interesting battle system, it's just a story wise, it's just a really great game.
Oh wow, yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think saying in your reasonings why you think that it wasn't really recognized, because that's when the heavy hitter Final Fantasy games really came on the scene. Like obviously Final Fantasy VII, what can really compare to that, in most people's eyes.
Yeah, and I mean, there's other great RPG games on the PS1 that weren't made by Square, um, but I think even compared to them, like you have like Legend of Dragoon or something like that, but I still feel like Legend of Legaia is often forgot about when people are talking about the great RPGs on the PlayStation 1. All right, so I'll just move on to my next pick. Now I have two more picks for underrated games, and we're both gonna go. They're both going old school. They're two games on the original NES. Um,
Okay.
so first, I want to talk about a game called Guerrilla War. Now, Guerrilla War is basically like a run and gun shoot 'em up type of game. I loved this game when I was a kid. Me and my one friend would always play this game. He had it first, and then once I played it over his house, I had to get it. I picked it up myself. It's a great run and gun. I thought it was awesome because you had infinite amount of continues, so you could just keep on continuing until you beat the game. We beat this game so many different times, but it was always fun, no matter how many times we played it. Um, and I think it's kind of like an underrated game because when you're talking about again, when you're talking about great games on the NES, or you're talking about great run and gun shoot 'em up type of games, uh, especially on the NES, or automatically you're gonna think, well, Contra or Super
That's
C.
exactly what I thought of when you brought up Guerrilla Wars. I was just like, Contra?
Yeah, yeah. So that's why I want to talk about this game, Guerrilla War. To me, I would play this game over Contra any day. Um, Contra, I mean, you have the Konami code, but that still only gets you what, like 30 guys. Um, I think I might have beaten Contra once uh, using the Konami code, but I always liked Guerrilla War because you had infinite continues, so you could just keep going. Even when you died, you just continued, and then you you just kept going until you beat the game. And it's a great couch co-op game. Uh, so anybody out there listening, if you're looking for original Nintendo games, definitely look into Guerrilla War. All right, and my last underrated game I want to talk about, it's a Capcom game. Now, there's a lot of Capcom games, and I'll even say that there's probably nobody listening is probably thinking of this Capcom game, but it's a game called Capcom Gold Medal Challenge, which was basically an Olympics type of game, but it was made by Capcom, and this game is awesome. You could play up to like, I think you could have like up to like 8 people playing this game. Basically, you would every event you would just like take turns. using the same. Well, no, I think you had to. You would use at least two remotes, but you would just basically switch on and off. They had like track and field, swimming, stuff like that. I remember though my favorite event in this game was always they had a marathon, and like you had to set your speed every length of the course or the marathon, and I always was trying to win the marathon, and I think I only ever won the marathon one time, and it it was awesome. I as many times as I've played that game though, I've only ever won the marathon once. And what was also cool about that is if you had, we had like a third party knockoff one, but like the super stick with the joystick and everything, you could basically turn up the turbo and you would win like every event because you were like super strong or super fast. The only thing it didn't work on was swimming. Swimming, I always had to use the regular controller. Um, but yeah, that's a. I doubt there's many people out there that know about Capcom Gold Medal Challenge, but I loved that game as a kid.
Yeah, I remember that that joystick controller. I remember looking at that as a kid. I was just like, what is this? Like, and I just assumed that it came with the NES. But that's interesting to find out that it's like something that you got from the third party.
Yeah, yeah, that's a third party. I actually still own it. It's down in my gaming room, but I'll have to take a look at it to see who made that one. But yeah, Nintendo had their official one, but we didn't have that one. We had the third party one, probably because it was cheaper. Um,
Okay. So I
but
see those. I see like modern adaptations of those for you know, many different systems. Now I know that they're very big on the fighting game scene. A lot of those players like to use this because it kind of replicates the arc. Like nowadays they have a lot more bells and whistles and buttons and I guess they replicate the arcade setup.
yeah, yeah, a lot of people who are into competitive, the competitive fighting or the competitive fighter sports scene, uh, will use arcade sticks for those tournaments and for those games. Um, and I guess you could consider these an earlier adaptation of those. I think even Nintendo re-released like a version of their official, you know, joystick thing for the NES Classic. I think there's even a version of that for the NES Classic that they released.
Oh
Don't
wow.
Yeah, don't quote me on that, but I think I saw it in the store.
Hmm.
Okay.
That's that's interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of cool like controllers and everything that come out nowadays. That's like that's a pretty lucrative line,
Oh
and I
yeah,
think
they're
that's really interesting. I have a special controller myself.
Oh yeah, well, that's for your Xbox One, correct?
Yeah, I got a it's by a company called Scuff, and you can go onto their website and pretty much they do Xbox and PlayStation controllers. I know that they started out with a 360 and the PlayStation 3, but now they I guess mainly do Xbox One and PS4. But you can go on and choose your colors and they have padding or grip that they put on the back for you, and you can actually choose the length of your thumbsticks. You can have one be lower than the other, or have one be higher than the other. And it's very interesting. They kind of have a thing too where they can take out the D-pad and just kind of make it a circle that you're able to press in each direction, rather than just the four-way road type of thing.
Yeah, some people get very very into the whole controller customization thing and everything. I'm not too into it, although lately I found myself looking at, because I bought at a yard sale last summer. I bought two Xbox 360 controllers, and the thumbsticks on them, the rubber on them, is like completely like worn down and peeling off and everything. So I was recently looking into like uh, covers for the thumbsticks to just, the little piece of rubber just to put over top of them. And while looking at them, there's like so many different colors that I'm kind of
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, this will be cool to get this color or get this color. So I'm kind of leaning towards I want to get, a couple like fluorescent green ones because it'll go with the Xbox 360. And then, for the other one, I'm not sure. I'm kind of thinking maybe, some sort of blue or maybe like a hot pink or something like that. Just something that'll really pop with because they're the black version of the Xbox 360 controller. So something that'll really pop out, against the black. And then I've also found myself maybe considering getting a couple different color thumbsticks to put on my PlayStation Vita, just to kind of make it a
Yeah,
little,
spice things up a bit.
yeah, just
Yeah.
make it a little bit more flashy looking,
Yeah,
but
that's kind of the thing that I like about the scuff, and I like too for them. You're able to interchange your thumbsticks if they do get worn out. I guess like they either get stuck or the rubber padding kind of wears down. You can order more from their website, and they gave you a little tool that you can take them out.
yeah, I know we talked about this one time. We were trying to figure out if that was an easy process to do on the just regular Xbox 360 controllers, because I also considered, trying to get new thumbsticks for them and put those in, but it would probably be easier and probably cheaper just to get the little thumbstick covers and just throw those on there.
Yeah, I think it's probably easier to do that because I know I was comparing my scuff with the controller that came with my Xbox One, and there the scuff has a little indentation around the thumbsticks that the tool can slide into, and it helps you turn. And the Xbox One doesn't have the typical Xbox One controller doesn't have anything similar to that.
Okay. Yeah, and like we were saying, the whole controller thing is there's a big market for it. It's not per se something I'm really into, but I know there's a bunch of third party companies like Mad Cats and Hyperkin makes their new thing they've been advertising is they made like a Xbox One controller, but it's like the size of a like Super Nintendo controller or something like that.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. I was just like, that's like interesting, and I guess like that might go better for like younger gamers too, because it's like kind of smaller.
Yeah, yeah. I always prefer smaller. I mean, smaller controllers don't really bother me too much because I have small hands. But um, you know, the smaller controller. I mean, I guess there's an appeal to it for something. I don't know what exactly it is, but yeah, Hyperkin's making those controllers, and then there's always been people who wanted smaller controllers. Even the going back to the Nintendo 64, those giant
Oh yeah, they
controllers.
were like they were
Yeah,
really awkward to get used to at first, but then once you got used to them, I
yeah.
didn't notice anything.
Yeah, well, even dating back to that time, there was a company called Hooray that made smaller versions of a Nintendo 64 controller. Probably kind of not. I would say it's kind of those controllers are kind of like a mix between the N64 controllers and like a GameCube controller, but
Okay.
they're really sought after even now. Sought after controllers. Those things go for hundreds of dollars if you can find one. Um, but yeah, so dating even back to then, people wanted smaller controllers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know that I just know that I really enjoy having my scuff because the padding. that is so great because my since I've had it for the last, like 4 or 5 months, my hands like don't cramp up at all. Like if I'm playing, for a number of hours at a time. But I know when I was, playing when I first got the Xbox and I was just using the typical Xbox One controller, I know my hands were like really cramping up, especially like in between my thumb and index finger would really like, cramp.
Huh. That's interesting because I know people complain about cramping a lot. I've never had issues with cramping while playing video games. Probably because nowadays I can only stand to play games for like an hour and a half, 2 hours at the most, and then after that, I have to do something else.
Yeah, you're not
That
really getting like the
yeah,
5 hour plus or
yeah,
10 hour plus gaming sessions.
that's probably why. And I mean, back in the day, like, and I'm talking about Nintendo, Super Nintendo days. I remember blistering being an issue when you're
Oh
playing the
yeah.
games.
Hmm.
That's I guess that still happens, but I guess it's less of an issue now with the different technology and different buttons they can put on those things and everything.
Yep, definitely.
All right, well, that was a nice little tangent on different gaming controllers. But
Hmm.
we're gonna move on now to overrated games. Now, Jim, I know earlier you mentioned you didn't have any underrated games, but you had some overrated games you wanted to talk about. So why don't you go ahead and start us off with some overrated games?
Okay. Yeah, I do have a few overrated games, and some of these I still think that they're fun games, but again, this is just going off of the attention that I see these games getting, where I'm like, yeah, it's fun, but I don't think it's like the greatest game I've ever played. And this kind of goes in for not just some a specific game, but sometimes an entire game series. Um, I guess like the first, like I can get into that like the entire game series, like the Call of Duty games. I think that they're fun. Like I have the current iteration, Infinite Warfare, which I mean it is fun, to play for an hour or two at a time. But I don't think that it's like the best game that I've ever played, and I think a lot of people you know kind of feel that way, especially having played, I guess, like the first Modern Warfare game that came out. I guess I was still in high school when that came out, so that was like 2007 or 2008. Like a lot of people said that that's like one of the best games in the Call of Duty series. Like that was like their first foray into games outside of World War II. But I just feel that those games are fun for a few hours. But I don't think that they're like super great like a lot of people what a lot of people believe. Um, then I guess the other game is like a really popular game, but not really a huge fan of it is Overwatch. I mean, again, it's something that's fun for a few hours, but I don't really understand why it's such a craze. I think it's a very chaotic game, and I think that it seems like a game that might have been rushed out, but again, it's just in my opinion, just fun for a little bit, but not really a award worthy in my opinion. Um, and I guess the biggest game that I've played recently that's kind of I felt like had a lot of hype and looked awesome, and I had a lot of hopes for it. Based on trailers that I saw for the game is called The Order 1886, and it's a game that's set in the late mid to late 1880s in Victorian England. You play as a knight of the round table. And it's visually, one of the best games I've ever seen. I think the art, the animation, like that is top notch. One of the best that I've seen, or maybe even the best. But the gameplay itself just kind of really put a damper on it for me. So I didn't actually play too far into it, although I will go back to it and finish it out because I don't like to leave games unfinished. Even if I do go on to something more interesting. But I mean, this game, it's I would describe it as being they give you this beautiful landscape, but you're on a set path, you're a robot on a set path, really. You can't, look down an alley, unless that's part of it, unless, that's the direction that you're going in. The game just wants you to keep going straight without, making any turns or, checking out the scenery, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so yeah, so you're just kind of set on from point A to point B, and there's no real exploration in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a lot of people have issues with games like that. That doesn't necessarily bother me, but I know it bothers a lot of people. One big game in recent memory, I have yet to play it. But Final Fantasy 13, a lot of people had that same problem with Final Fantasy 13. They said that it was too linear. You only went from point A to point B. You were set in like a certain pathway or along a certain line, and you couldn't stray from that at all. So yeah, a lot of people have an issue with games like that, and I mean, I guess it's kind of disappointing, especially you're describing the 1886 game. I know I've heard you speak about this game previously, but I mean, certainly sounds like an interesting story for a game.
Oh yeah, I mean, like playing as, one of King Arthur's Knights of the Round Table, and that whole thing for somebody that studied history in school like myself, like I kind of really enjoy alternate history type media, whether it be books, movies, or, in this case, video game. But I mean, again, I was just really, really disappointed in the fact that, like I want to explore, Victorian London, but it's just kind of like, oh no, you have to go to point B right now. You can't, run down this thing. Whereas I think if this game was like an open world RPG, it probably be, in my opinion, be getting, rave reviews.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny. You just kind of made me think of something you said. Like, now, if this game was an open world RPG, and I just spoke about Final Fantasy 13, and it's funny because I just thought of something. People had issues with Final Fantasy 13 because they said like, oh, it's too linear, and you can only go from point A to point B, and you're only set on a certain pathway. Um, and it's funny, I hear complaints about Final Fantasy 15. I hear complaints because people say, "Oh, it's an open world game and that's not Final Fantasy," and problems with that. So it's almost kind of like, okay, well, which do you want? Do you want a linear game where you go just from point A to point B, or do you want an open world style of game where you can just go around, do whatever you want? And you talking about that, just me, just put that thought in my head, and I just want to sort of put that out there.
I mean, I kind of like, going back to, last episode I mentioned the Fallout series a lot. Definitely Fallout 4, the most recent game in the series. It has a main quest line, something that you need to do, but, there's so many side quests that you can do, you know, even before you get to, that main quest. And you can, put that main quest off pretty much as long as you want doing all these side quests. Although, once you do all of those side quests, that really kind of have, story aspects to them, you will have to get to, the main quest to unlock more, side quests. But I mean, it's just kind of like not like, oh, you can't do this right now. You need to, go ahead and do the, as long as it's not story sensitive, it's not going to tell like, oh, get to that, that main story quest.
Yeah, and I'm okay either way. Usually in games and RPGs, I won't necessarily go out of my way to do like side quests. I'll do them sort of if I'm off doing something else and I sort of stumble upon finishing this other quest, or if sometimes if like a certain quest really like moves me and I'm like, oh, I definitely have to do this, I'll do it. But for the most part, I don't really stray away from the main storyline in games. But I mean, I don't really have a preference. If it's a real linear game from start, point A to point B, that's fine with me. If it's an open world game, like Final Fantasy 15, and you can run around and do whatever you want, that's fine with me too. Either way is fine with me. I like all different styles of games, so I don't really have a preference. So I just kind of going back to the overrated thing. I kind of wanted to say I'm kind of surprised actually to hear you say that you think Overwatch is an overrated game. Now I've never played it. It's not my genre. I don't even know. Is Overwatch a first-person shooter or is that like?
Yeah, I mean it's a first person shooter mostly. Not saying that the gameplay or anything like that is terrible. I really enjoy the gameplay. But I mean, it's to me, it's just not what I expected. I think it's a very chaotic and fast paced game. But I mean, that can be fun at a time. But I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, like it's a good game, but it's not, I wouldn't vote it number one. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I don't really have much to comment as far as that. I'm not really a fan of first-person shooters. I mean, I've played them. I'll sometimes play them. Usually, sort of in a setting where it's just like a bunch of people playing. Couch co-op or whatever.
Yeah.
Like Golden Eye. Something like that. But first person shooter is not really my favorite type of game. So yeah, I don't really have much to say on Overwatch. I know of Overwatch. I know there was some controversy with Overwatch and them censoring some stuff with it. The graphics seem awesome. I mean, the
Oh
style.
yeah, it's really good. Well done in that aspect.
Yeah, the style of it seems like this type of style that I would like, but I'm just not into the whole first person shooter and online, shooter type games. But I'm surprised to hear you say Overwatch because I thought that would be something that was right up your alley.
Yeah, I mean, like the points of the point, in the game, I guess the objectives of the game, they're pretty, like once you play a few games, it's pretty well clear. But I just felt like sometimes that everybody could bunch up playing that game, and you have like you could have like 8 people, all just kind of in a melee, and I was just kind of like, oh, that kind of gets me, I prefer things that are more spread out and a lot more to where you can maybe strategize a little bit. But I feel like Overwatch, it's like really good if you're just like have a good trigger finger.
Okay. All right. And I know you touched on, games like, um, Medal of Honor, or there's other type of war type games. Again, not my type of game or my foray. Um, I am not really into those type of games. But I can sort of understand where you're coming through with the overrated type of games because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that aren't necessarily gamers but they like playing those type of games and those are the only types of games that they'll buy, so I think that that's why a lot of times they're high in popularity.
Yeah, and I know like just listening to what a lot of the pros say about the current iteration. They don't really like that. They because it's all has to do with like you can like run on the wall and like get what they call like jetpacking and stuff, and it kind of takes away from like the realism, I guess. Back to when it was World War II and like Call of Duty 4, it was just like you were basically like a Marine or like a terrorist. It was kind of more real, not like jetpacking. Kind of the current game kind of feels like a Halo game. But I mean I know that they said games that came out previously. were had like similar types of feels to where they just weren't happy with it.
Now, is the Call of Duty? Would you say that that's probably the most popular at the moment of that genre, like the war first person shooter type of game?
Yeah, I would say that that it is the most popular. Again, this is just from what I know of from listening to different pros from some of the different teams. Because from what I've heard is that after Halo 3, Halo kind of fell off on the competitive scene, and a lot of people actually switched from playing Halo to Call of Duty. I think that was maybe around the 2011 time frame.
Okay, okay. Yeah, Halo is another one. I never really
Yeah, I
got
know like
into
the
Halo.
first like I remember like the first two games were like huge, and like that was back when you had the three wires that you plugged into your TV way back before the HDMI port, and like people used to lug their systems and TVs for like these like basically basement tournaments, as I would call them.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, moving on. I'll talk about my couple games that I think that are overrated. Now, I'm sure, I'm sure, a lot of people probably disagree with Jim's opinion of Overwatch being an overrated game. Well, I'm probably gonna get a lot of people with a disagreeing opinion about these next few games I'm going to talk about that I consider to be overrated games. Just remember, though, this is my own opinion. But the first game I'm going to say that I feel is an overrated game is Chrono Trigger. I talked about it a little earlier when I was talking about Super Mario RPG. Um, when people talk about Chrono Trigger, they it's always in definitely in the top five. People say top five best RPGs on the Super Nintendo. A lot of people have it as number one, or at least in the top five of their best RPGs of all time lists. But I recently played it. Um, didn't really see what all the hype's about. To me, it was just another RPG. It was good. It was okay. It's not a certainly not a bad game, but I definitely wouldn't put it in my top 10. Best RPGs of all time. It. I don't even. I mean, I guess probably because I can only think of maybe like 5 or 6 RPGs on the Super Nintendo. Well, I mean, I can think of more than that, but I haven't played them all. But I'm not even certain it would be on my top 5 RPGs for the Super Nintendo. I just couldn't get into it. It starts out to me the. I think where they lost me was the beginning. Like it kind of starts out, you go to the past, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh well, we might as well do this, and I'm just kind of like, okay, I guess if you say so. But I didn't really feel connected to the characters or the story or anything like that. So I mean, maybe it was too overhyped for me because I played it later on, and people were always saying how it's the best, one of the best RPGs. But I played it, and I thought it was okay, but certainly not in my top 10 best RPGs. So I'm gonna have to say that I feel that that's an overrated game.
Hmm. Now, do you think that it's like overrated because like you said, like people might have overhyped it, and were there things that they may have given away to you that like when you thought that it was coming up, you expected it, or was it
No,
just kind of
actually, no. For Chrono Trigger, I didn't really know much about it going into it. I knew it involved time travel, but that was about it. So I wouldn't really say that there was anything that was spoiled for me. And I guess it was just because it was. I I guess that's what I'm gonna have to chalk it up to, and just say like, I guess it was just overhyped for me, and went into it and was like, all right, people say that this is the best game ever, so you know, I guess it could just not possibly live up to that, and for me it didn't. So I guess that's what I'm gonna have to say, that it was just overhyped for me, and I was disappointed by it.
Okay, interesting.
All right, and the next game I'm gonna talk about, again, it's gonna be an unpopular opinion. Certainly not in the majority for this, but it's basically kind of along the same lines as Chrono Trigger. And the next game I think is overrated is Earthbound, another Super Nintendo RPG. Now I will say I do like Earthbound better than I like Chrono Trigger. Um, but Earthbound's another game where people, say it's the best RPG on the Super Nintendo. It's, the best RPG ever. I think it's a good game. It's a quirky game. Like I said, I like it better than Chrono Trigger. But to me, it's not in my top 10. It's not in my top 10 JRPGs, that's for sure. And I guess I'm going to have to chalk it up again to just being overhyped. It's probably because I played it later on. It's probably another game where, you know, people probably just overhyped it for me. And by the time I played it, I was just sort of like, oh, it's a good game. It's okay, but I wouldn't put it on my top 10 JRPG list. So yeah, I'm gonna have to chalk that one up to being overhyped as well. You know.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that seems to be the common theme. People are like, "Oh, you have to play this game. You have to play this game. It's like so great." But I feel like that happens, across a lot of media, whether it be any type of entertainment. I feel like that can happen.
Yeah, yeah, it can happen with movies, happen with books. Like you said, TV shows, any type of media that can happen with. So then, and then the last game I wanted to talk about. Now I have to preface this with, well, I'll just go ahead and say the game. Another overrated game I think is Final Fantasy IV. Now, I will say I have not played the Super Nintendo version of this game. I think a lot of people who talk about this being a great game or one of their favorite games has played the Super Nintendo version of it. I played the remake on the DS, and I didn't like it at all. Now, I think, though, that's a lot of people who like the original Final Fantasy IV don't like the remake on the DS. They completely redid it, made it in the 3D, got rid of the hand-drawn sprites and everything. That could be a reason why I didn't like it, although I will argue that I wasn't really into the story. Sort of had the medieval knight vibe going on, which I'm not really into that type of storyline. But I'm not going to completely rule this game out. I do have the PSP version, which is, again, it kind of goes back to the hand-drawn sprites and everything. So I do own that. I want to give that a playthrough sometime and see how I enjoy that one. I anticipate that I'll probably enjoy it much more than the DS version.
Now, do you think that did the gameplay on the DS have anything to do with your like, I guess, your less than positive view on it?
I think so. From what I understand, there's a huge difficulty spike in the DS version, meaning it's way harder than the other versions of it. So that could be another reason why I wasn't really into that version of it. That could contribute to it as well. So like I said, I do want to try out the PSP version, or even if I could possibly get a Super Nintendo version of it as well, which is Final Fantasy II here in the US on the Super Nintendo. I would try a version of that as well. But as of right now, the DS version, I didn't like it. So maybe I can't necessarily say Final Fantasy IV is an overrated game, but people always talk about Final Fantasy IV, that it's a good game or a great game, and at least the DS version is not a good game in my opinion. I did not like it.
Okay. So have you ever had any games that maybe like like the style, like the way that the game plays, that's kind of like really ruined it for you? And I mean, like camera angles were like messed up, or different types of things like like that.
You know what? I can't really think of any. I usually don't let that type of thing bother me with gaming. I just kind of accept it for what it is, and kind of, I guess, consider that part of like the challenge or difficulty of that in particular game. Like I might say like, oh, that's a hard game because the camera angle is weird and everything, but I don't necessarily say like, oh well, I hate that game, or the camera angle is why that's such a bad game. Um,
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I kind of like I mean, it was a kind of like what you said. It was a this game was, I thought it was a good game, but it was Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. It was kind of the game that came out for the DS that focuses on Rocket's story. And I mean, it was a good game, but I mean, I felt like sometimes the camera would go off the screen, and like you would be like kind of backed into a corner and like looking at the wall, and you're trying to like maneuver. But I mean, I feel like if that game had been on like like a console, like like PlayStation, it would have been much easier game. But I felt like sometimes in that there were certain parts in that game where the camera like really like just kind of puts you in a bad spot,
okay.
in a critical battle.
Yeah, I can see that, and I mean that's understandable. Um, I don't know. I guess I'm just more easygoing when it comes to that stuff. I usually don't let that bother me a whole lot.
Hmm.
Any other games that you can think where that is an issue in?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, I know in like some of the early Kingdom Hearts games, I know like they have like, how your companions just kind of follow you around like Donald and Goofy. Like it's not like other RPG games where you just kind of control the main protagonist. But then when the battle starts, everybody becomes present. And I know like sometimes it wasn't really during battles. It was during like when I was maybe trying to like climb up on a ledge to get like a hidden a treasure that was like hidden. And I know like sometimes when I was trying to like get my bearings and get the angle, I know I'd end up like looking at Goofy like straight in the face, when I'm trying to like look over.
Yeah. I remember that happened in the Kingdom Hearts games, but like I said, and it doesn't bother me a whole lot.
Yeah, I guess I'm easier to rage than you on that type of stuff.
I guess so. All right, well, we'll end our overrated topic there, and we'll move on to our next topic: disappointing endings. Now, when we originally talked about this topic, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a great topic." But then when I actually sat down and was trying to think of games that had disappointing endings, I could not really think of too many. I mean, I came up with a couple, but I couldn't really think of a whole lot, or at least I was surprised that I couldn't think of a whole lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I can only really come up with one, and it's not really like the endings of, I'd say endings, plural, weren't really bad. They were just like really tough to make a decision, and that's Fallout 4. You kind of have main factions, and if you support three of the four main factions, you're going to have to kill pretty much all the other factions if you pick you know any of the certain three, and you could pick a fourth, but you'll still have to end up destroying at least one of the other factions. But I say it's kind of disappointing because I thought that there was going to be like I guess a fifth option, for the ending of the game, just based on some of the things that were you know, mentioned in like text and and dialogue throughout the game. I thought that you were going to be able to kind of set up like an alliance between all the major players in the wasteland and kind of have them work together, because I mean the main thing is you might lose side quests and like cool items if you destroy any of the particular factions. That was basically my my view on it. I was just like, oh man, I don't know which one to pick because they all have I can get cool stuff from all of them.
Okay. Yeah, that would make sense. Sometimes in games I want them to. I think a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I love it because it has so many options or whatever." But sometimes I want a game to lead me a little bit more and kind of guide me a little bit more and say like, "Okay, maybe you only have two options and it's like either you're a good guy or bad guy, and sometimes it's a lot easier when it's like that.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, I think that's why I think Fallout 4 is such a great game, because there's a lot of it's not black and white, it's all pretty much all gray.
Yeah.
Whatever you choose, there's pros and cons to, so you have to really sit back and decide, or just play the game multiple times,
Yeah, I
which
was
I'm
gonna say, or you just play the game four times and choose
yeah,
everyone. Yeah,
yeah,
which I'm not really a fan of. I play the game once and I get the ending that I get, and that's it for me. I move on to the next game. I have too many games in my backlog to play a game multiple times.
okay,
Well, and since we're talking about playing a game multiple times, that kind of is a good lead into one of my games that I'm not necessarily going to say it's a disappointing ending, but it's more of an annoying ending. And that's Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast. Sonic's first 3D game. Uh, Now, the what's annoying about this game is, okay, you play as Sonic, you go through the whole game as Sonic. Well, then you also have to go through the whole game as Tails, which, okay, you play Sonic and Tails, that's fine. But then you have to play as Biggs the Cat, which involves fishing. If I want to play a fishing game, well, first of all, I don't want to play a fishing game. But if I did want to play a fishing game, I wouldn't play Sonic so I could be Biggs the Cat and fish. And you have to play as Amy. You play as some robot, and it's just you have to play that game through like 5 or 6 different times, and it's not much different each time through. So then after you beat the game 6 different times, then you have to do the ultimate ending, and you have to play as Supersonic, and you have to beat the big Chaos Emerald thing, and the fight is a pain in the butt. It took me a bunch of different times to finally beat that. I guess technically ultimately beat it. After you beat it 6 different times, you have to do the ultimate ending, and you gotta beat the game again as Supersonic, and it was just annoying. And like I stated earlier, I hate games that force you to replay it like that. I want to play the game one time, beat the game, and then I'm done.
yeah. I mean, that seems a little excessive, especially especially since like you said that there's not really much of a difference between each of the characters. Like, I could see if it's just kind of like you know where I know I played some RPG games where you know the main protagonist kind of meet at the end, and you kind of have to get there, and with each of the main protagonists. But I mean, they interact at some points, but I mean, mostly they have their own like trials and tribulations that they go through, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, if it's completely different, or if it's like a completely different storyline, and then the characters just meet up at the end, that's fine. Like, there's a game off the top of my head that I want to eventually play. It's a JRPG called Live Alive or Live a Live. I think it's Live Alive though, which is it was only released in Japan, but there's an English version that I have a reproduction cart for, and I want to play that. It's for the Super Nintendo. That game's like that. There's like 5 or 6 different characters, and you play the story, then you meet up at the end, but their stories are completely different stories, and you just happen to meet up at the end. That's fine to me, but Sonic Adventure, the stuff you were doing with each character was just too similar, and it was too much alike for each character to have multiple playthroughs. So that I'm gonna list that as one of my disappointing endings, just because it was annoying to have to play so many different times to get to the ending.
Oh yeah, I would get tired of that, like being so repetitive like that.
Okay. All right. Well, you have any other disappointing endings?
Um, no, that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, I had one more I wanted to talk about. It's an RPG I just recently played. It was a game called Arc the Lad, which is a PS1 RPG. It just kind of like it's a good game. It's a really good game, and you're kind of moving along, and you're collecting these items because this monster was released, and you want to seal the monster back up, and you collect all these items, and you're kind of now, I suppose this is going to be a spoiler, so if you haven't played that game, you might want to skip ahead a little bit. But basically, you collect all these things, and then all of a sudden, it just ends. You collect all these things, you're like, alright, I got all the things I would need to get. I think they're like gems or something like that. And you think like, okay, I'm gonna go fight that thing now, and go beat this game. And you come out, you like, basically to get the last item that you needed, you basically like it basically like, oh, to allow us to know that you're worthy, you have to fight what's the worst in you. And basically like you fight a mirror image of yourself. You have like 6 characters, and you fight all 6 of like your mirror images, and you beat them, and you get the last item that you need, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna go beat the main villain or whatever. And you come out, you get captured, and then it ends.
Oh man.
And I remember even when I beat it, I was like, wow, this music they're playing after this battle, it's really triumphant, and like wow, and it was because it's the end of the game. And like, from what I understand, the story kind of continues, but in Arc the Lad 2, you're like different people. So I kind of don't really understand, like, okay, like, the story goes on, like, the whole overall story goes on. There's 3 games for it, but, like, I don't see how the first story intertwines with the second story. I mean, maybe if I play it, I'll understand better, but from what I understand of it, it's, like, completely different characters. The characters from the first story are in the game, but you're not them. You don't control those characters from the first game. So, yeah, it was kind of a disappointing ending. Like, all of a sudden, it's just like, oh, all right, the game's over.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, but it's still a good game, though. It's a nice little RPG. All right, well, we'll move on to our next topic. Next topic we want to talk about was uh, physical games or gaming versus digital games or gaming. Um, Jim, what's your opinion on physical versus digital? Do you strictly, play digital games, or do you play strictly physical games? What's your thought on it?
Well, I mean, my thought on it is, kind of what I can, whatever I can get. But I mean, I guess I would prefer to have a physical copy of it because it is kind of like the whole library setting. I kind of want to display them and say like, look at what I have. Whereas like you can't really like. I mean, I guess you could open up your library on your TV, but I mean, I think it's awesome to kind of have, your whole collection, maybe displayed on a shelf, for people to see how many you have. But I mean, there are games where you just can't, they don't have a physical copy. Like, I play Smite, and that's a digital download only, and it's free to play from the PSN and the Xbox, store. But I mean, that's, I actually found that out the hard way. Like, I was looking to buy it at GameStop, and I just, wasn't finding it at all. And then I, researched it a lot more, and they said, oh no, this is, digital download only. And I mean, I am thinking, I have an Xbox Gold membership, and every month they have, 3 games that you can download for free, games with Gold. And I've been kind of keeping my eye out for any games that might be on my list, such as we'll talk about this a little later, but, the Mass Effect games, I've just been kind of keeping an eye out for them. Because, I mean, I guess there are, in that case, it's free, it's like a free download, so I, would make the concession there. But, I mean, I guess I would really prefer to have the physical copy.
If you're interested, I just saw that yesterday at GameStop. I saw the collected, I guess collector's edition on the Xbox 360, where it's the first 3 games. I think it was like maybe like $15 at the most. It was pretty cheap.
Oh, really?
I think.
Yeah, because I know that's one of the games that's one of.
Or wait, I'm sorry, that's completely off. It was actually $40. I'm sorry.
40. Oh wow.
Yeah, that's a big difference. But yeah, it was $40, which still isn't bad considering it's 3 games that you get.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I kind of have the same viewpoint on digital first physical. First and foremost, I like to play the games that I have or that I buy, but I'm also a collector. So I like to have a physical copy, and I'm like that in all media, whether it be video games or comic books or movies. I like to have a physical thing. I don't like to download things or buy things digitally because the way I feel about it, if I download something, I don't own it. I don't own anything. Like, okay, so I download something. Say I download a bunch of games on my PS4, and then something happens to that PS4 and it craps out on me. Well, guess what? I don't own those games anymore. Same thing could be said with movies or photos or, comic books. Like, if I downloaded a bunch of comics and had them on my phone or, my Kindle or something like that, something happens to that Kindle, then I no longer own those books.
I don't know though. I think that for like your like Xbox and PS and PlayStation, like your user, I think that those digital downloads might be connected to that. So I mean, if you have like your login and you logged in on another like PlayStation where you had to get a new one or a new Xbox, I believe that they would be they would pop up. They would say like, oh, okay, you like your username, like you have all of these connected to you, all these titles.
Yeah, I think that they do, but I mean I think this is another point to my personality, I guess, is that I'm lazy with that stuff. I don't update things when I should. I don't keep up with things, like I don't upload stuff to the cloud or back things up or anything. Maybe that's why I prefer to have an actual physical thing, something I can actually look at on the shelf or something like that. But yeah, I'm a collector, so I like to I like the to have the actual physical item. If they release a game digitally, even if I want to play the game, guess what? If it's only digital, I'm not buying it. I'm not playing it. If you release it physically, then I'll buy it. But if you're not gonna do that, I'm not gonna buy it. That's
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
just
Like, I know some people like the convenience of being able to get a digital game because I mean, with that, like if it's a new release, they can just purchase it and download it. They don't have to leave their house. I guess.
it is convenient, and I will say that, and this might be weird, but I will download games, but the only way I download them, and I have about like 4 games that I've downloaded on my PS Vita, but they're all games that I actually own physically.
Okay.
Because I download them so then I can play them remotely, or I can take them with me, or if I go somewhere I can have them on my Vita, and I can go somewhere if I go on vacation I can have them. And I have Final Fantasy 7, Arc the Lad, which I just talked about, Final Fantasy 9, and a game from the TurboGrafx called Utopia, which is an RPG. I downloaded all those games digitally because I own them physically, and because I want to have the convenience of being able to play them remotely.
Okay.
That's the only way I'll download something, is if I own it physically already.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I
mean,
know that seems weird, but that's my thought process on it.
yeah. Yeah. I can get that. But I mean, I think a lot of people, I mean, are still into the physical copies because I mean, whenever there's a release of a new game, I know like the Madden games, there's always people that are lined up for those, and I know still with the Call of Duty games are the ones that come to mind, where people are lined up outside of GameStop waiting for the midnight release of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas I would figure I'm like, why don't you just buy if you want it that bad, why don't you just buy the digital copy. But there is some, like we said, there is something to having the physical copy that you can have it on display.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that's where we're both leaning on this topic is we like to collect our games and have them on the shelf. And there's nothing if someone wants to download all their games, that's perfectly fine. I got nothing against that. I just for me personally, because like I said, I'm lazy with updates and stuff like that, and I'm a collector, so I like to have a physical copy. I'm not really much into the digital gaming.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, the only way I'll take a digital thing is if it's free. Like Smite, I got that's free to play. And then the Master Chief Collection, I got a digital download code that came with my Xbox One along with Halo 5. So it's
Okay.
just kind of like, oh, okay, like you're
Yeah.
giving this to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that if something's free, you're not just not gonna pass it up.
Yeah, spend money.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to sort of our finishing and usual topics on here on the Jam Gamecast. Jim, what are you currently playing?
Well, I mean, I'm playing a lot of Smite again. Season 4 just got re-released. So the meta kind of got changed, and I'll be honest, I've been sucking pretty bad in a lot of the games, but that kind of gives me like like that kind of feeds into my competitive drive where I'm just kind of like, oh, like I can't sign off. I just lost. I have to end on a win.
Now,
You know,
when you say the meta is updated or changed, what exactly does that mean?
it kind of seems like certain items get changed, and certain abilities on certain gods they get like buffed or nerfed. So you're not really so you might have been really good with a god, and gotten a lot of kills, but that specific like your specific tactic and strategy might be affected by a certain attack being weaker or stronger, and lacking range. So a lot of your timing, you have to I guess reset that. and different items that you use. Items might have gotten removed or replaced or, tweaked in a certain way. So you kind of have to change the way you go about purchasing, items throughout a match.
Okay.
So it's just kind of like, rebuilding a strategy.
Interesting. I mean, I guess that makes sense. It kind of stretches out the lifetime of the game, you know?
Oh yeah, like it, kind of makes you like, oh man, I was good once. Like, let me go ahead and, get back to that point.
Okay. Playing anything else?
Uh, no, not at this, not at this time. I'm just kind of, a lot of times when I get really, addicted to a game, that's what I'll play that for, hours on end for a period of time, maybe, a few months, a few weeks. It depends. It can vary for me.
Okay. All right. So we got Jim playing Smite. I'll talk about now what I'm playing, or rather, I'm going to talk about real quick. I just got finished playing Tales of Hearts R on the PlayStation Vita. It's an RPG, part of the Tales series. It was pretty good. It starts off a little slow. It gets really, really pretty good in the middle. But then I'm going to have to say, the last half of that game, probably the last like 15 to 20 hours, that game drags. It's not a bad game, and the ending, it's a good ending and everything, but the last half of the game really, really drags on. Now, that's the first Tales game I have ever played. I've talked to some other JRPG fans, and some people say that all the Tales games are like that, but from what they also tell me is Tales of Hearts R is a lot worse than a lot of the other Tales of games. But yeah, they said that most of them drag on, but Tales of Hearts R, I feel like the last half of the game really dragged on. I like the game, but boy, did it drag on at the end. So I just got finished playing that the other night. I started off a new JRPG. I'm playing as Xenoblade Chronicles on the 3DS. I like it so far. I'm only a couple hours into it, but from what I played so far, the game is really cool. The story seems interesting, and the music, man, I'm not really like into a lot of, I think music makes sort of contributes to the game, but the music is in this game is really good, so I'm excited to continue on with Xenoblade Chronicles.
Okay, okay.
All right, we'll move on to our next topic. Is there anything new that's on your radar, Jim, that you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned this when we were talking about digital versus physical. Really become interested in the Mass Effect series. I know Mass Effect 4. I believe it's Mass Effect 4 Andromeda is set to be released here shortly on the Xbox One and PS4. And I've always heard good things about the first three games, and I've heard that if you like the Fallout games, you probably really enjoy the Mass Effect games. So I have been really looking to purchase them, but I've been kind of looking into to see what I can get. Only owning an Xbox One and a PS4. But I mean, I can get them. I know I can get them on Xbox One because all three of the games are backwards compatible. I just
Okay.
actually looked through the list the other day,
Yeah,
and
that's what I was going to
was able
ask
to find all of
if
them.
they're backwards compatible.
Yeah, and I know that there is like I know you mentioned the all-in-one, the Mass Effect trilogy, and I believe that game is also considered on the list. So I'll just have to see what will be more cost effective for to get a physical copy of one, two, and three, or just pick up the trilogy
Yeah.
game.
Now, this is a series that I'm interested in getting into as well. For me, I have to play them in chronological order, so
Oh yeah,
I gotta
definitely.
get the first one first and play that first. So I usually I'm always checking out eBay prices and everything, and the first Mass Effect on the 360 doesn't go for much. In fact, I'm watching a couple now that are only like a couple dollars, so far. That's in an auction. I'm not sure how much they go for and buy it now or something, but I don't think it's any more than $10. So
Oh wow,
and
that's really great. I mean,
that's the
I would
first
say that
one, and I think
I
you could.
was a little apprehensive on pulling the trigger on the games at this point, but I was just doing a little bit more research on the whole backwards compatible thing. I wasn't really clear on it at first.
Yeah, yeah, I know Andromeda is. I've seen a couple little previews and some screenshots and everything. It looks good to me. Now I know it's been getting killed in reviews though, and
Really.
yeah, not a lot of people are having a lot of good things to say about this game. But at least for me, I mean, I'm not a professional reviewer or anything like that, but it looks good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a series that I'm interested in playing as well. Um, all right, so anything else on your radar?
Yeah, I would say Horizon Zero Dawn, kind of one of the most highly anticipated games of this year.
Oh
That's still on my
yeah,
radar. I just haven't really picked it up because I just haven't had a chance to go out and get it. As of yet.
yeah, that's definitely on my radar too. That's one of the ones I wanted to talk about. I definitely want to get it. However, I'm cheap when it comes to buying games, so paying $60 for a game, for a new game, I don't know. I'm probably gonna wait for a price drop in it or wait till it's on sale or something. But it looks good. It's kind of. I mean, it's still in people's eyesight, but I feel like at the same time though, it's kind of being overshadowed a little bit with Zelda Breath of the Wild coming out on the
Hmm.
Switch, and they're kind of similar open world type of games. I feel like Legend of Zelda has kind of taken some of the thunder behind Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah, I think that's because it was pretty much one of the only games released on with the Switch. Whereas the PlayStation 4 has a whole other host of games.
Yeah, yeah, but definitely something that's on my radar as well. Anything else on your radar?
I would say that I am really, really contemplating picking up a copy of The Last of Us Remastered, which, I believe came out in 2014 on the
Okay,
PlayStation 4,
I just
which I heard a lot of, great things about that game, and they just did announce a sequel, so that's kind of why I wanted to, play the first game.
I just watched a video today, and it was about. In fact, it was the people listening probably know the channel, but it was on Metal Jesus Rocks. He did a video with another guy today where they were talking about cheap PS4 games, basically games that you can get for $20 or less. And the Last of Us Remastered Edition was on that list. Apparently, you can get that for like $20 or less than that.
Oh wow,
Yeah, I mean,
that's a
I know of the game. That's something I would maybe pick it up if I saw it for the right price, but it's not something I would go out specifically searching for.
okay.
All right, anything else on your radar?
No, I would say those are I guess five games that are kind of on the radar right now, and I'm still really thinking about when I want to pull the trigger, and when I really have the chance to pick them up.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, on my radar, we talked about Horizon Zero Dawn already. There's just a couple other JRPGs I recently discovered on the PS4. Game called Knights of Azure and a game called Omega Quintet. Uh, your JRPGs in that style. If you know JRPGs, you can probably you know, see what kind of style these games are in, what type of games they would be. So they're kind of on my radar. Um, and then I kind of also just kind of recently discovered or heard about a JRPG on the DS. I'm always looking out for JRPGs on the DS because it has so many. But it's a game called Rondo of Swords, and it's a strategy RPG, and it actually looks pretty cool. I'm surprised I never heard of it before, and it looks pretty cool. And I think it doesn't go for much on eBay, so it's something that it's on my radar, and I'm interested in picking up. All right, well, that's pretty much it for what's on my radar. So we'll move on to our last topic of the podcast, and that's recent pickups. Has there been any recent pickups you've had since our last podcast, Jim?
No, I mean, like I said previously, I just haven't had haven't had the chance to, pick anything up, and just trying to, I guess, what I'll really have to decide is, which of these games, I guess like I have 5 games that are going to be definite pickups for me, and then there are maybe a couple other games that are like still on that I'm still on the fence about. But I mean, it's really just going to be, what game I really want to get first on top of that list, or what game is the cheapest at a certain point in time. But I really just have to get into my research and looking around, as it were.
Yeah, figuring out the best prices and everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I actually, on the flip side, since our last podcast, I've actually acquired a bunch of new games. I recently went to the local retro gaming store and traded in a bunch of old games. Some games that were actually given to me, some old Sega stuff and some old PlayStation 1 stuff. I had a couple TurboGrafx 16 games that were doubles that I traded in. So I had a bunch of different stuff that I traded in. Some Sega CD games that were given to me. Um, so I traded them in, and I got 4 games. I got 3 PSP games. A game called Kingdom of Paradise, which is a JRPG. A game called Spectral Souls, which is a JRPG. I got a game called Brooktown High, which actually looks pretty interesting. I'm not certain you would kind of classify this as a JRPG or an RPG. Um, it's kind of like I guess maybe like a dating sim type of game or something like that.
What?
Well, it's like you're like in high school, and you like, I think you go around and try to like get dates, and like you're basically going through your average day in high school, going to
Oh, okay.
class,
Okay.
passing tests, getting dates for Friday or Saturday night or whatever. But it looked pretty interesting, so I picked it up. Um, and then I got a game called this is a game on the Nintendo DS. It's in JRPG. It's called Custom Robo Arena, which it actually looks really cool. Actually, it's a JRPG where you're like a kid in this town, and the like all the hype in this town for the kids is you get these little robots and you battle them, and then if you like win the battles, I guess you get money and play. You're in tournaments and you get money. Then you can, build up the stats on your little customizable robots and everything like that. So
Oh, nice. That's like a like a theme that's been prevalent a lot. There was a like an anime show that I watched for a little bit that was about that, and that reminds me, kind of Real Steel, which is basically a live action Rock'em Sock'em Robots
oh
game.
yeah, Real Steel. I was just thinking about that movie the other day, actually. Um, so yeah, and then yesterday, in fact, I picked up Shantae Genie Hero on the PlayStation Vita. Really, it comes in a really nice like collector's edition and box and everything like that. Um, and then I recently got from eBay for like $1 or something like that. Not very expensive at all. I picked up a JRPG called Magical Star Sign on the DS, and then probably my biggest acquisition or purchase since the last podcast, I actually got a Wii U. Um, I kind of pieced it together um, on from eBay. Just kind of fell into good deals, which is why I bought it. I've been wanting to get one, but I've just been kind of waiting for the right price. Um, so just by piecing it together, I bought the console separately, and then the gamepad separately. And I feel like I paid a pretty good price. I think I paid uh, really a lot under what most full package systems are going for, at least on eBay and in the store too. I recently asked my local retro store how much they were selling it for, and I got it for way less than that. So I'm happy with it. And so then while I was at GameStop last week, I picked up a couple uh, games on the Wii U. I feel like a lot of places are starting to, even though they don't have the consoles anymore, they're starting to discount a lot of their Wii U stuff. And I got a couple good prices on games at GameStop for the Wii U. I picked up Tokyo Mirage Sessions Cross FE. Now, I've heard people say officially it's Tokyo Mirage Sessions Cross FE, but essentially it's the hashtag sign.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
like Tokyo Mirage Sessions hashtag FE, or like the pound sign or number symbol, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it. But I've heard people say Tokyo Mirage Sessions Cross FE, so I'm guessing that that's the official title of it. It's basically kind of a mix between, the whole Persona genre or games and the Fire Emblem series. So I'm actually really excited to play that. And then I also picked up Rodea Sky Soldier, which is an interesting game. And it comes with two versions. It comes with a Wii version and it comes with a Wii U version. Now, I've heard the Wii version is the version to play, so I'll probably play that version of it. But it was a good deal on it, and it's basically a Wii game and a Wii U game that you get. So yeah, I'm happy
Okay. Cool. Cool.
happy with that pickup as well. So yeah, I've actually I've picked up a lot since the last game cast. So I probably won't be picking up a whole lot. So I probably won't have much to talk about as far as recent pickups on the next podcast. But yeah, I picked up a lot this time around.
Cool. Nice. Nice. Now, have you put anything into the Wii U just to kind of give it a test run yet?
No, I got the console yesterday in the mail, and then the gamepad and a charger for the gamepad came in the mail today. So I haven't even had a chance to put everything together and test it out. I'll probably actually maybe try to do that when we're done with the podcast. So yeah, I haven't done much with it. I'm excited though to kind of play some games. Almost, I mean, not necessarily. More so, I guess, remotely. I can have the console downstairs in my game room, and I can play on the gamepad up in while I'm laying in bed or something like that. So
Oh yeah.
I'm excited to play some games like that, like the HD version of Wind Waker. I'm excited to play that. Some other games, some of the new Super Mario Bros. Or 3D Super Mario World. I'm excited to play. Unfortunately, Tokyo Mirage Session, you have to play with the TV and the gamepad, so you can't play that remotely. But yeah,
That's annoying.
yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to play some new Wii U games.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the Nintendo Switch's Big Brother.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up now for this week's episode of the Jam Gamecast, episode 2. Jib, is there any closing words you want to say or anything like that?
Yeah, I just really wanted to, thank everybody that came out and checked out our first episode. That was really, really cool. Everybody that took a look at everything. Again, just ask everybody to, leave a like, subscribe, and leave any comments or suggestions, tips that you might have for us. Down in that comment section, we'll definitely take a look at those. Everything that you do for us is much appreciated.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for checking us out. And like Jim said, if you have any comments or feedback, let us know in the comments. Give us a like or subscribe. Hit the alert button to get alerts when we release new episodes. We're trying to keep it to every other week, so that's when we'll be releasing stuff. And also, we've talked about Jim does some streaming on Twitch. So in the near future, we might have some sessions where Jim's streaming some stuff on Twitch. So we might have some info on that if people want to check Jimmy out playing some games on Twitch. So be on the lookout for that in the near future.
Yeah, definitely. You can come along and join up with me and come along for the ride.
All right. So until next time, we'll talk to you later.